So we'll start with two men, both of them seriously ill and in the same hospital room. One man was allowed to sit up in bed for about an hour every afternoon to help drain the fluids from his lungs, and his bed was next to the window. The other man had to spend all of his time on his back. But they talked, and they talked for hours. Their wives, their homes, their jobs, their military service, where they go on vacation. And every afternoon when the man in the bed could sit up, he would pass by and tell his roommate all the things that he could see outside his window. And the man in the other bed began to live for those 1 hour periods when his world would be broadened and enlivened by all of the color from the outside world. And of course, the man sitting next to the window, sitting upright for about an hour every afternoon, he told him about a park, a lovely lake that had ducks and swans and children sailing model boats, and he could see young lovers walking arm in arm. And in the distance, he could see a beautiful city. The man next to the window described all this in great details, and the man on the other side of the room, on his back, would close his eyes and imagine all the things that he could not see. One afternoon, though, the man by the window described a parade passing by, but the man laying down couldn't hear the music. He could only portray it with words. Days and weeks passed like that, and one morning, the day the nurse arrived to give them both their baths, she found the lifeless body of the man by the window who had died peacefully in his sleep. And as soon as it seemed appropriate, the other man asked if he could be moved next to the window. And the nurse was happy to make that a switch, making him comfortable. She left him alone. And then painfully, you know what he would do? He propped himself up on one elbow to take his first real look at the outside world. And he strained slowly to look out of the window beside the bed. It faced a blank wall. The man asked him what could have compelled this deceased roommate who had described such wonderful things outside that window. And the nurse says, "You don't know. He was blind, and he couldn't even see the world." I like stories. So what moral do you take from that story? Oh, there are all kinds. The poet amongst you would say, oh, the vision of the heart overwhelms the vision of the eyes. Some of you might say, oh, the sightless sees something that people who can see cannot. Some of you would say, oh, the eyes of kindness are more powerful than the eyes of the body. One way or the other, the gospel that I just read was obligatory for everybody who wanted to become a Catholic for centuries. And now we do it with the RCIA program. Not from Mark, though, or Matthew, but we do it from the Gospel of John. But everybody who wants to join the church has read this gospel and asked, what does the story of the blind man's miracle have to do with you? And why are we preparing you for baptism with that story? It just so happens that last Sunday we had James and John, and this week we've got Bartimaeus. And James and John, of course, they wanted power. They wanted to sit on the left side and the right side of Jesus. And we put them right next to Bartimaeus because James and John had it all wrong. And Bartimaeus, the blind man, had it all right. You see, the apostles could see, observe, look at Jesus, but they were morally blind. Bartimaeus, who couldn't tell a parade from a blank wall, was full of insight. He could see. So, even before people wanted to become Catholic, they'd have to be able to see what Bartimaeus saw in Jesus with the eyes of faith. And then out of this gospel comes this very plain question: what do you want me to do for you? And of course, that's how we want to answer it. How would you answer that? Jesus came up to you and said, what do you want me to do for you? None of you would be so crass as to mention the lottery, right? But health, reclaiming my Peggy, my Bobby, my lost child. Lord, I want to really be happy, and I haven't felt that way in a long time. What do you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus will forever, until the end of time, be identified with the one man that gave the good answer. He said, I want to see. I want to be able to see a blank wall and perceive the needs of my next-door neighbor. I want to see meaning in life. I want to know what it's like to be alive. And in some sense, in a world so confusing and unfair, to see the hand of God in my life. You see, we're all blind, my friends. Some of us are blind to our faults. Can't bear them. So we brush them under the carpet. I want to see. Some of us, we always focus on what is wrong in another person, and we're blind to what is right. I want to see goodness. Some can't see, they're blind for all the money in the world. They can't see the blessings that they have in this life. And their life becomes a long, long complaint. Some, the worst blindness is that of hatred, and they're in dark all the time. Some are blinded by their pride because they're so important, and they place themselves at the center of the universe. Others can't see because they're always feeling sorry for themselves. Some people are blind and think that their prayers are not answered. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, and we know this, there are people that you know who sacrifice day in and day out for others and their kids. What do they see in that? They're not blind. There are those who, in these harsh times, wherever they go, they create beauty. What do they see that others do not? They're not blind. There are those who come into these church doors, in faithless times. And what do you see here that others do not? You can see. There are those who teach and live a moral life in very cynical times, and they can see that. And then there are those of us who are praying, who always have before them the people that they love, and they're praying for them in so many ways. Notice that in the gospel, the more that Bartimaeus was happy, the more they wanted him to be quiet. I would suggest to you that the people who can really see with the eyes of Christianity can be very threatening. So, my friends, if you see the finger of God in your life, cry out all the louder. Cry out all the louder might entertain a few people. It'll certainly confuse an awful lot. It might upset some people, but cry out. People have a right to know what you see here that they do not. And how will they know if you do not, in your own way, say, Jesus, Son of David, help me out? At the very last of the Bible, in the book of Revelation, is this most beautiful quote. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it so much as dawned on us what God has prepared for those who love. It's not 2020 vision here. It's called the beatific event, the beatific vision. My friends, before we see totally the beatific vision when it's all over, we are expected to see him now in our lives. That's what your faith does to you. And my friends, faith can even change a blank wall into something beautiful. Not bad, is it?